April 15, 1944. Dawn breaks over the jagged hills of northern Kyushu, Japan. The air is thick with the salty scent of the Seto Inland Sea, and the horizon glows faintly orange. In the scattered villages below, farmers begin their day, unaware that the sky above is about to deliver a shock they could never have imagined. Lieutenant Hiroshi Tanaka squints against the rising sun, scanning the horizon from his perch at the small airstrip near Amura. Beside him, Sergeant Masato Fujimoto wipes sweat from his brow, adjusting the worn leather straps of his flight helmet. Their unit, a squadron of Mitsubishi A6M0s, has been ordered to patrol the skis, but morale is light. They have faced American aircraft before, P-38s, B-25s, but nothing as intimidating as the rumors suggest. Then they see them, twin silhouettes immense and lumbering, gliding almost effortlessly through the early morning haze. B-29 Superfortresses, their polished fuselages glinting, engines humming with a deep, steady rhythm that seems almost supernatural from this distance. Tanaka smirks, shaking his head. "Clumsy beasts," he mutters. "They will never reach us in time." Fujimoto laughs, his voice high-pitched with disbelief. "Do you see how slow they move? 8 engines, and yet they lumber as if dragging their own weight." Below, the civilians start to notice the shadows passing over their rice paddies, but their attention is pulled to the noise, the peculiar, persistent roar that grows steadily. Tanaka gives the order to climb, his Zero's engine whining as it tears into the sky. At nearly 25,000 feet, the pilots close in, expecting the slow giants to be easy prey. But as they approach, the B-29's formation holds with uncanny precision. Gun turrets swivel and glint, anticipating every maneuver. The Japanese pilots laugh nervously at first, mocking the lumbering shapes until the first distant explosions ripple across the city below. Tokyo, thousands of miles away, erupts in firebombs, and the laughter dies on their lips. Fujimoto's grip tightens on the controls. "Impossible," he whispers, voice barely audible over the wind. Tanaka feels it too, the sudden bone-deep realization that these flying fortresses are not just aircraft. They are harbingers of devastation, turning the familiar into chaos with a single pass. And from that moment, the mockery evaporates, replaced by a creeping, chilling respect. The sky above Kyushu holds its silence for a heartbeat before the distant thunder of ordnance reaches them. The B-29s continue their relentless march, each one a floating fortress, each engine a drumbeat of inevitability. Tanaka knows the game has changed. This is no longer a skirmish in the clouds. It is the beginning of a campaign that will challenge everything he and his fellow pilots thought they knew about air warfare. April 15, 1944. 28,000 feet above Amura Bay, the air is thin, cold, and brittle. Lieutenant Tanaka's Zero shudders as he presses the throttle, closing the gap on the nearest B-29. The massive bomber seems almost to anticipate his approach, its formation disciplined, its gunners ready, every turret scanning the sky like a sentinel. "Watch the tail, stay high," Tanaka shouts into the intercom, voice tight with tension. Sergeant Fujimoto echoes the warning, feeling the Zero respond sluggishly in the rarefied air. At first glance, the bomber appears vulnerable, slow, ungainly, and wide. Yet as Tanaka dives to line up a shot, tracer fire erupts from the tail turret. He jerks the stick, narrowly avoiding a stream of steel that cuts the sky like lightning. Fujimoto's heart pounds. The stories of B-29s being easy prey are evaporating in real time. Each attempt to close in is met with precise, coordinated defensive fire. He tries a high-speed pass along the starboard wing, only to be met by the bomber's tail gunner, whose bursts whip past his cockpit, the heat of tracers prickling the canopy. The air smells faintly of burning oil, and the roar of engines drowns out everything else. Tanaka's knuckles are white. "How can something this massive move with such accuracy?" he mutters, awe creeping into his voice. Around him, other Zeros maneuver desperately, trying to flank the bombers. One pilot dives too low, caught by the wake turbulence from the B-29 formation, and struggles to recover. The Americans' confidence is tangible, radiating from the steady precision of their formation. Then it hits them, the scale of the threat. Tokyo, once a distant city, becomes a vivid image of destruction as reconnaissance reports stream in, smoke rising, entire blocks vanishing under incendiary bombs. The B-29 is no longer just an aircraft, it is a moving fortress, impervious to the attacks that had once routed fighters in seconds. Tanaka banks hard, scanning for weaknesses, but each approach exposes him to overlapping fields of fire, and each retreat underscores the bomber's invincibility. Fujimoto's voice cracks over the intercom. "Lieutenant, we underestimated them. Entirely." Tanaka doesn't reply immediately. He feels the weight of history pressing down with every beat of the B-29's engines. This is the beginning of a new era in aerial warfare, one in which the old rules no longer apply. Mockery has given way to fear, and the pilots of the Japanese Imperial Army and Navy know that the skis they once dominated are no longer their own. Above them, the bombers continue, gliding with terrifying precision. The sun catches their silver fuselages, making them look like shining, unstoppable giants. Tanaka exhales slowly, the reality settling in, the era of easy victories has ended. Now every sortie is a gamble, every maneuver a test against a machine that defies expectation. March 9, 1945. Midnight drapes over Tokyo, but the city is restless. A thin crescent moon struggles to illuminate streets crowded with wooden homes and narrow alleys. The air smells faintly of smoke from the city's ever-present factories, but soon that scent will be drowned out. High above, at 30,000 feet, Lieutenant Tanaka and his squadron track the distant hum of B-29 engines. The formation appears again on the horizon, like silver leviathans gliding effortlessly through the night sky. At first, the Japanese pilots cannot make sense of it. Their intelligence predicted raids, yes, but nothing of this magnitude, nothing like the precision with which these bombers maintain their course. Then the fires begin. From miles away, Tanaka sees Tokyo's eastern districts ignite in a surreal blaze. The incendiary bombs rain down in patterned devastation, turning wooden neighborhoods into rivers of flame. Streets disappear under walls of fire, cries rise up from below, muffled but unmistakable. The glow reflects off the undersides of the B-29s, making them look almost supernatural, untouchable. Fujimoto can barely breathe. We cannot stop them, he whispers. His Zero dips sharply to avoid anti-aircraft fire. But nothing can shield them from the realization. These bombers have shattered the illusion of Japanese air superiority. Each incendiary strike is a statement, a calculated shock meant to break morale as much as infrastructure. Tanaka banks hard, circling above the devastation. He watches familiar streets, markets, and homes consumed by fire. The roar of the B-29 engines merges with distant explosions and the crackle of burning timber, creating a soundscape that will haunt him forever. His fingers tighten around the throttle. Mockery has been replaced entirely by disbelief, and beneath that disbelief lies a gnawing dread. The city they swore to protect, the heart of their nation, is powerless against these airborne fortresses. In the observation towers below, anti-aircraft crews fire into the sky, desperate but largely ineffective. The B-29's altitude keeps them out of reach, their formations perfect, their resolve unshakable. Tanaka and his fellow pilots find themselves powerless to intervene, witnessing destruction unfold as if they were spectators rather than defenders. By the time the first light of dawn touches the horizon, Tokyo has changed forever. Smoke rises in massive columns, visible for miles, and the city's familiar outlines are unrecognizable. Tanaka's squadron lands in silence, engines cooling, hearts heavy. The lesson is brutal and unmistakable. The age of mockery is over. The B-29 is no longer just a machine. It is the embodiment of a force that has rewritten the rules of warfare, leaving Japanese pilots and strategists scrambling to adapt to a reality they never imagined. April 16, 1945. Hours after the inferno of Tokyo, the skyline is a jagged silhouette of smoldering ruins. The air smells of charred wood, melted metal, and human fear. Smoke curls in spirals, drifting across the bay like dark tendrils reaching for the sky. On the airfield at Amura, Lieutenant Tanaka climbs from his Zero, boots crunching against dirt and scattered debris. He surveys the horizon with eyes heavy with disbelief. "Did we really fight today?" Sergeant Fujimoto asks quietly, voice trembling. The words hang in the air, unanswered. Tanaka cannot respond, for the images burned into his mind defy explanation. Streets swallowed in fire, the relentless hum of B-29 engines above, each a herald of unstoppable destruction. The commanding officer, Captain Akiro Hoshino, paces in front of the squadron, his face pale under the flickering lights of the makeshift command post. Maps of Tokyo are spread across the table, marked with red zones indicating areas obliterated in the previous night's raid. Hoshino shakes his head. "We underestimated them. We thought speed and maneuverability would protect us, but they operate on a scale we cannot match." Tanaka studies the maps, tracing the flight paths of the bombers, the firestorms ignited across the city. "We need new tactics," he mutters almost to himself. "We need altitude, speed, coordination." His words trail off as he realizes that even their best Zeros, trained for dogfights and interception, are ill-equipped to engage these flying fortresses. Meanwhile, intelligence officers gather reports from survivors, fire watchers, and radar posts. Each report confirms the terrifying consistency of the B-29 raids. The bombers strike with surgical precision, dropping incendiaries in patterns designed to maximize destruction of wooden housing and infrastructure. Anti-aircraft batteries are largely ineffective. The B-29s fly higher than the gun's effective range, and radar-guided fire control is still in its infancy. In the hangars, maintenance crews work frantically, repairing what they can of the Zeros damaged in the scramble to intercept. Tanaka walks among them, nodding, the exhaustion etched into every face. The pilot's usual confidence has been replaced by solemn determination, fear tempered by experience. They understand now that Mockery is dangerous, disbelief deadly. The B-29 is not just an enemy aircraft, it is a new reality of war. By mid-morning, the Imperial Japanese Navy convenes an emergency strategy meeting. Admirals and colonels argue over the feasibility of intercepting the bombers, deploying night fighters, and improving radar coverage. Tanaka listens from a corner, notebook in hand, absorbing the deliberations. The strategies are theoretical, the reality remains stark. Tokyo has already burned, civilians are dead or displaced, and the B-29s will return. Fujimoto approaches, silent for a moment before speaking. "Lieutenant, what do we do next time?" Tanaka exhales, tracing his gaze over the smoking city. "We survive, we adapt, and we pray that we can delay them long enough for others to evacuate." The day stretches on. Pilots are briefed, formations revised, and defensive zones established. Yet every adjustment seems a fraction too late, every tactic a step behind. The realization sinks in: Japan's air defense has been fundamentally outpaced. The B-29, a marvel of engineering and logistical planning, is a force that cannot be mocked, cannot be dismissed, and cannot be ignored. At dusk, Tanaka sits on the edge of the runway, watching the horizon. The smoke of Tokyo drifts toward him, glowing faintly orange against the fading sky. He feels the weight of history pressing down: the city they loved, the traditions they protected, the lives of ordinary citizens, all rendered vulnerable by machines and men whose scale and determination outmatched their own. Night falls, the stars emerge distant and cold, while far above, the B-29s patrol silently. Each engine hum resonates in Tanaka's chest like a reminder. The war has changed, and Japan is learning painfully that the rules of engagement are no longer what they were. April 17, 1945. The first pale light of dawn brushes the Tokyo skyline, but the city bears the scars of the previous night's inferno. Smoke spirals endlessly from burning districts, mingling with the mist rising from the bay. Lieutenant Tanaka's Zero sits on the tarmac, engines idle, yet the tension is palpable. Every pilot knows that by noon, the B-29s will return, unyielding, relentless, and precise. Tanaka climbs into his cockpit, the familiar smell of oil and gunpowder filling his senses. He can feel the vibration of the machine under his gloved hands, a reassurance in a world turned chaotic. Beside him, Sergeant Fujimoto straps in, his face tight with anxiety, eyes darting toward the horizon as if the enemy might already be visible. Today, the squadron has orders to intercept the bombers at a higher altitude, at the edge of the clouds, where the Zero's agility will be tested to its limits. At 25,000 feet, the wind bites through every layer of clothing. Oxygen masks hiss as the pilots adjust for the thin air. Then the distant hum begins, a low, almost imperceptible vibration that grows into a rolling chorus of engines. The B-29 formation emerges like a silver tide, stretching for miles. Engines synchronized in a terrifying rhythm. Their altitude is nearly untouchable, and their gunners are alert, scanning the sky for any sign of interception. Tanaka's heart pounds. "Form up left flank," he shouts over the intercom, his voice sharp with urgency. The squadron responds, slicing through the cold air, chasing the shadows of the bombers. At first glance, the B-29s appear massive, cumbersome targets, but as the Japanese pilots close in, their illusions of vulnerability crumble. The overlapping fields of fire from the tail and dorsal turrets force Tanaka and his wingmen into high-speed maneuvers, tight loops, and sudden dives to avoid tracer fire that screams past their cockpits. Fujimoto banks sharply, almost losing control as he dodges a burst from a tail gunner. "They anticipate every move," he cries. The Zero's usual tactics, fast dives, high-speed passes, and flanking maneuvers are insufficient. Every approach exposes the pilot to concentrated fire, every retreat is a gamble. The B-29s seem to move with an almost uncanny intelligence, their formation unbroken, their mission unshakable. Below, Tokyo trembles. Fires continue to spread, fed by incendiary payloads designed to destroy wooden homes and critical infrastructure. From their altitude, the pilots can see entire neighborhoods consumed in orange and black chaos. The streets, familiar to those on the ground, are transformed into rivers of flame. Smoke rises in thick columns, obscuring everything beneath, and the roar of distant anti-aircraft fire mingles with the wind whistling past the cockpits. Tanaka glances at Fujimoto. "We cannot underestimate them, not for 1 second. He tries to keep his tone steady, but even he feels the gnawing fear that has taken root in every pilot's heart. This is no longer a skirmish in the clouds. It is a contest against an enemy whose scale, preparation, and engineering surpass anything they have faced. The B-29 is not merely a bomber. It is a force of nature, an aerial juggernaut capable of turning entire cities to ash." Hours pass in tense aerial choreography. Pilots weave through the sky, climbing and diving, chasing and evading. Every maneuver is precise, every action a test of nerve. Tanaka manages a brief pass over the bombers attempting to line up a shot, but the concentrated fire from overlapping gunners forces him into a steep spiral to avoid destruction. His mind races, fuel is finite, ammunition limited, and yet they must protect what remains of Tokyo. From the city below, civilians watch the unfolding spectacle with terror and awe. Fires light the night sky even before the B-29s begin their next pass, and the distant sound of falling ordnance shakes buildings and rattles nerves. Families huddle in basements and makeshift shelters, listening to the distant roar of engines, feeling the vibrations through the earth itself. Tanaka's squadron finally disengages, battered but alive. The pilots land on smoke-choked runways, engines winding down, hearts pounding. The air is heavy with acrid smoke, the acrid smell of burnt wood, metal, and human fear. Debriefings are tense. Strategy officers attempt to analyze the raid, plotting interceptions, considering altitude, speed, and coordination. Yet every plan seems to lag behind the reality they face. The B-29s operate on a level that leaves them perpetually a step behind, and the cost of catching up is painfully evident in the streets below. Captain Hoshino gathers the pilots. "You fought well," he says, voice tight. "But we must accept the truth. The B-29 is unlike any enemy we have faced. We must adapt or risk losing everything." Tanaka nods, listening as the weight of leadership, fear, and responsibility presses down. Every sortie, every maneuver, every tactical choice carries consequences measured not just in aircraft, but in lives, in cities, in the future of a nation. Night falls once more. Tokyo glows faintly through the haze, a city scarred but still alive. Tanaka sits alone by the edge of the runway, looking at the stars, listening to the hum of distant engines. Somewhere far above, the B-29s patrol silently, a reminder that the war has shifted. Mockery is gone, disbelief is replaced by urgent respect. And in the hearts of those who survive, a quiet dread lingers. The sky no longer belongs to them alone. Dawn fades into a heavy morning haze as the squadron preps for another sortie, the airfield buzzing with mechanics and pilots, the smell of fuel and scorched earth still lingering from the previous night. Lieutenant Tanaka climbs into his Zero once more, glancing at the smoldering horizon where Tokyo burns like a river of molten amber. Sergeant Fujimoto joins him, hands shaking slightly as he secures his harness, eyes flicking nervously toward the distant sky. "They'll be back," he mutters almost to himself, the weight of inevitability in his tone. Tanaka nods, gripping the throttle. "Then we meet them, again." Engines roar to life, drowning the distant cries from the city below, and the squadron taxis toward the runway, wings slicing through the smoky dawn. At 26,000 feet, the temperature drops sharply. Ice forms along the edges of the cockpit canopy, frosting over in delicate crystals that glint in the rising sun. Tanaka's fingers tighten around the stick, the hum of the engine vibrating through his gloves. Ahead, a glimmering silver formation appears, stretching as far as the eye can see, a mechanical leviathan advancing relentlessly toward the city. The B-29's precision is unsettling, each bomber maintaining perfect intervals, their defensive guns swiveling like mechanical eyes, scanning the skies for threats. Tanaka signals the squadron to form up, hearts pounding in unison as they begin the chase. First engagement is chaotic. Fujimoto dives from above, trying to flank a bomber, only to have tracer fire whip past his cockpit, the heat of each burst scorching the metal around him. Another pilot, Lieutenant Sato, is clipped on the wingtip by a fragment of shrapnel, spiraling down in a controlled dive, screaming warnings through the radio. Tanaka rolls hard, narrowly avoiding concentrated fire from overlapping turrets, feeling the Zero shudder violently as tracers slice the sky around him. The B-29s are both lumbering and lethal, their altitude and formation making traditional interception tactics almost useless. Below, Tokyo smolders under the relentless rain of incendiaries. Entire districts vanish in seconds, flames roaring through wooden homes, bridges collapsing into rivers, and factories reduced to glowing skeletons of steel and brick. Civilians scatter, some running blindly through smoke-choked streets, others huddled in basements, praying for salvation that may never come. From above, the city is a patchwork of fire and shadow, a surreal canvas of destruction that etches itself into every pilot's mind. Tanaka's stomach twists as he realizes the scale of the devastation. The helplessness of the defenders and the terrifying efficiency of the B-29's strategy. The squadron attempts coordinated maneuvers. Tanaka leads a series of high-speed dives, weaving between bombers, trying to force a break in the formation. Fujimoto follows, wings trembling from exertion, adrenaline coursing through his veins. The B-29 gunners anticipate every move, their fire cutting paths of destruction through the sky. Each evasive maneuver strains the Zeros, pushing engines to their limits in the thin, icy air. Yet despite the skill and courage of the Japanese pilots, the bombers remain largely unscathed, their mission continuing with mechanical precision. Hours pass in this deadly ballet. Tanaka feels exhaustion seeping into every fiber of his body, muscles burning, fingers numb, and yet the fight cannot stop. Each sortie brings new horror, colleagues hit, cities ablaze, civilians fleeing, and the relentless hum of B-29 engines above like a heartbeat that cannot be stilled. The pilot's fear is tempered only by the knowledge that retreat is not an option, that every action they take matters, even if the cost is unimaginable. In the command center, officers pore over radar readings and reports, desperate to find a weakness. Altitude speed formation, shouts Captain Hoshino, frustration etched across his face. If we can predict their path, if we can concentrate our fire, but even he knows that prediction is almost impossible. The B-29s operate at the edge of known aviation limits, faster than anticipated, higher than anti-aircraft defenses, and more coordinated than any previous enemy. The war above Tokyo has become a contest of engineering and endurance, and Japan is still learning the rules. By late afternoon, the squadron returns to base battered but alive. Pilots stagger from their cockpits, faces streaked with sweat, soot, and exhaustion. Tanaka walks among them, cataloging injuries, damages, and morale. "We cannot keep up like this," murmurs Fujimoto, voice hoarse. Tanaka's eyes are fixed on the horizon where the smoke still curls. "We adapt, we survive, and we learn." Every word is heavy with the gravity of survival, the knowledge that tomorrow will bring the same enemy, the same unyielding threat. Night falls over Tokyo once more. The city glows faintly through the haze, smoke rising in endless columns. Tanaka sits quietly on the edge of the airfield, listening to the wind whisper through the skeletal remains of hangars, hearing the distant hum of engines above, feeling the cold press of fear and respect settle deep in his chest. Somewhere high in the stratosphere, the B-29s patrol silently, unstoppable, implacable. Mockery is gone, disbelief replaced with grim understanding. Every pilot who survived knows the skis no longer belong to them alone, and the war has entered a new, terrifying chapter. The next morning, April 18, 1945, arrives with an uneasy calm. Tokyo lies beneath a hazy curtain of smoke, the city still smoldering from previous raids. Lieutenant Tanaka and his squadron gather for a briefing, their faces pale, eyes shadowed from sleepless nights and adrenaline-fueled vigilance. The maps spread across the table are dotted with red marks, each representing neighborhoods reduced to ash, factories destroyed, and lives forever altered. Captain Hoshino points to a sector in the northeastern districts. Today, the B-29s are expected to target industrial zones. They will come in waves, our intercepts must be precise. Any misstep and entire districts vanish. Tanaka listens intently, absorbing every detail. He knows that theory is no substitute for the reality above the clouds. He climbs into his Zero once again, the cockpit smelling of heated metal and oil, the instruments cold and unforgiving. Beside him, Sergeant Fujimoto checks his oxygen supply, eyes flicking nervously toward the horizon. "Are we ready for them?" he asks, voice tight. Tanaka grips the throttle, jaw clenched. "We have no choice, we fight or the city burns unchecked." At 27,500 feet, the first distant hum reaches them, subtle at first, then growing into a low, relentless roar. The B-29 formation emerges, glinting silver against the morning haze, engines synchronized in a rhythm that seems almost supernatural. The Japanese pilots climb higher, weaving through clouds, positioning themselves for interception. Tanaka signals a left flank maneuver, the Zeros cutting through the thin air with precision born of desperation and fear. The encounter begins immediately. Tracer fire erupts from the tail and dorsal turrets of the B-29s, streaking past cockpits, melting aluminum edges and forcing evasive maneuvers. Lieutenant Sato dives sharply to flank a bomber, only to be forced into a tight spiral as overlapping fields of fire cut the sky. Fujimoto tries a high-speed pass, feeling the vibration of the Zero as tracers whistle past him, each near miss igniting panic and adrenaline in equal measure. The B-29s are not just massive, they are lethal, their defensive coordination perfect, their mission uninterrupted by the chaos around them. Below, Tokyo is aflame once again. Factories, warehouses, and residential blocks vanish under precise incendiary strikes. Smoke rises in thick black columns visible from miles away, mingling with the thin haze of morning mist. Civilians flee wherever possible, some huddling in underground shelters, others running blindly through burning streets. The cries of the displaced, the smell of smoke and burning timber, and the distant thunder of explosions create a symphony of terror that reaches the ears of every pilot above. Tanaka pushes the Zero to its limits, banking and diving, trying to break the bomber formation. Fujimoto follows, wings trembling, fingers numb, lungs straining against the thin, freezing air. The B-29 gunners anticipate every move, overlapping their fields of fire with deadly efficiency. Every approach carries risk, every retreat is a test of nerve. Tanaka feels exhaustion pressing down, muscles burning, adrenaline surging and ebbing with every evasive maneuver. Yet he knows the fight cannot cease. Each sortie matters, every action delays the destruction of Tokyo even by moments. Hours stretch like eternity. The squadron weaves through the sky, the Zero's agility tested to the utmost, engines screaming in the thin air, tracers carving invisible scars through the clouds. Tanaka's eyes are fixed on the bombers, calculating trajectories, anticipating fire, seeking weakness where none exists. Each is a fortress and their formations are impenetrable. The old rules of dogfighting are meaningless here. The lumbering giants above have rewritten the game entirely. On the ground, anti-aircraft crews fire desperately, their flak shells climbing toward the sky, trailing smoke and fire but missing the bombers by hundreds of feet. Observers note the precise altitude of the B-29s, the sheer scale of their payloads, and the devastating efficiency of their attacks. In basements and shelters, civilians hold their breath, praying for the invisible sky warriors to spare them, knowing that each nightfall could bring fire and death anew. Tanaka and his squadron finally disengage, engines sputtering from overexertion, Zeros battered but still airborne. They return to base in grim silence, faces streaked with sweat and soot, minds weighed down by the sheer scale of the destruction below. Maps are reviewed again, red markers multiplying, strategies debated, but the conclusion is inescapable. The B-29 raids will continue, and conventional tactics are insufficient to stop them. By nightfall, Tokyo glows faintly through the lingering smoke, an embered city under constant threat. Tanaka sits on the edge of the runway, staring at the horizon, listening to the wind whisper through shattered hangars and scorched tarmac. Somewhere above, the B-29s patrol silently, engines throbbing like a relentless heartbeat. Mockery is gone, disbelief replaced by grim respect and dread. The pilots of the Japanese squadron understand the brutal truth. The war has entered a new phase, one in which the skis are dominated not by speed and maneuverability alone, but by engineering, coordination, and an unstoppable determination to destroy. Tanaka closes his eyes briefly, inhaling the cold night air, feeling the weight of every life lost, every home destroyed, every soul displaced. Tomorrow the B-29s will return, and they must be ready. April 19, 1945. Tokyo wakes beneath a heavy gray sky, the lingering haze from previous raids settling like a suffocating blanket over the city. Lieutenant Tanaka climbs into his Zero, the cockpit cold frost forming along the edges of the canopy. Sergeant Fujimoto follows, adjusting his oxygen mask, hands shaking slightly as he grips the throttle. The airfield is alive with activity, mechanics racing to repair Zeros, officers barking orders, and the distant groan of anti-aircraft batteries being tested against phantom targets in preparation for the inevitable arrival of the B-29s. At 28,000 feet, the first hum of engines reaches them, subtle at first, then rising into the unmistakable roar of the B-29 formation. The bombers appear on the horizon, silver leviathans stretching across the sky, engines synchronized like a mechanized heartbeat. Tanaka signals his squadron into formation, hearts pounding in unison, knuckles white on control sticks. Every pilot knows the danger, every maneuver is a calculated gamble. The engagement begins immediately. Tracer fire erupts from the bombers' defensive guns, streaking past cockpits, melting aluminum edges, forcing tight dives and rapid climbs. Fujimoto banks sharply to evade a tail gunner, his heart hammering as he narrowly avoids a stream of steel that would have shredded the wing of his Zero. Lieutenant Sato attempts a flanking maneuver, only to be met with simultaneous bursts from overlapping fields of fire. Each approach exposes them to lethal precision, every retreat is a test of nerve. The B-29s are massive yet terrifyingly agile in their formations, almost anticipating every move. Below, Tokyo continues to burn. Fires rage across industrial zones and residential districts, smoke rising in thick columns that obscure streets and alleys. Civilians flee wherever possible, some running through choking haze, others huddled in basements and shelters, eyes wide with terror. The roar of engines above mingles with distant explosions, creating a chaotic symphony of destruction. Tanaka's stomach tightens at the scale of devastation, the helplessness of defenders, and the terrifying efficiency of the B-29's coordinated attack. The squadron tries new tactics. Tanaka leads a high-speed dive along the bomber's flank, attempting to force a break in formation, but each maneuver is met with overlapping fire. Fujimoto follows closely, wings trembling, fingers numb, lungs burning in the thin air. The B-29 gunners anticipate every evasive action and the bombers remain largely unscathed, mission proceeding with mechanical precision. Hours drag on in relentless aerial combat. Tanaka's body screams with exhaustion, muscles burning, adrenaline surging, yet focus cannot waver. Below, the city crumbles under incendiary payloads, bridges collapse, factories vanish, neighborhoods turn to ash. Every sortie brings new horror, colleagues wounded or killed, civilians displaced, and the constant hum of B-29 engines above, a reminder of their unstoppable presence. In the command center, officers analyze radar reports, trying to predict the bomber's path, concentration of fire, and potential vulnerabilities. Captain Ishino's voice is taut with frustration. Concentrate your fire, predict their path, anticipate them. Tanaka listens, knowing full well that prediction alone cannot counteract the scale and precision of the attacks. Each raid is faster, higher, more efficient than the last, leaving defenders perpetually a step behind. By evening, the squadron returns, battered but alive. Pilots stagger from cockpits, faces streaked with soot and sweat, minds heavy with the reality of destruction. Maps are reviewed, red zones multiplying, strategies debated. The conclusion is grim and inescapable. Conventional tactics are inadequate. The B-29 is not merely an aircraft, it is a force rewriting the rules of war in real time. Night falls. Tokyo glows faintly through the lingering haze, the skeletal remains of neighborhoods illuminated by sporadic fires. Tanaka sits alone on the runway edge, listening to the whisper of wind through ruined hangars, feeling the vibration of distant engines above. Somewhere high, the B-29's patrol unchallenged, a silent reminder of the new reality. Mockery is gone, disbelief replaced with respect and dread. The pilots of Japan's squadron understand the truth. Survival now depends on adaptation, ingenuity, and endurance, and the skis no longer belong to them alone. The airfield is quiet but tense. Mechanics move silently among damaged Zeros, officers consult maps under flickering lights, and pilots sit in hushed conversation, trading tactical notes. Each knows the B-29s will return, larger and more determined. Tanaka traces his gaze over the horizon where smoke still rises in endless spirals. Every decision, every sortie, every maneuver carries consequences measured not just in aircraft, but in lives and the future of the nation. As midnight descends, Tanaka leans back against the side of his Zero, exhaustion heavy but mind racing. The war has shifted irreversibly. The enemy above is no longer something to be mocked, dismissed, or underestimated. Each engine roar, each flash of silver fuselage is a herald of destruction and a test of resolve. Tomorrow the cycle will begin anew, the skis filled once more with the mechanical giants that have rewritten the rules of aerial warfare. Tanaka inhales the cold air, feeling the weight of loss, responsibility, and the relentless push of history pressing upon every living soul below. April 20, 1945. Dawn barely breaks through the smoke-choked skis over Tokyo. Lieutenant Tanaka and his squadron assemble on the airfield, faces etched with exhaustion and grim determination. The city below is a patchwork of fire and shadow, ruins smoldering from previous attacks. The hum of distant engines reaches them first as reconnaissance reports indicate the approach of another massive B-29 formation. Captain Hashino paces among the pilots, voice sharp. They will come in waves, higher than yesterday, faster than you expect. Focus, coordinate, survive. Tanaka climbs into his Zero, gripping the throttle, heart pounding, eyes fixed on the horizon where the first silver glimmers begin to appear. At 29,000 feet, the air grows thin, icy against exposed skin. The B-29 formation stretches across the skyline like an unstoppable tide, engines synchronized in a mechanical rhythm that echoes through every pilot's chest. Tanaka signals his squadron to ascend and split, attempting to intercept from both flanks. Every maneuver is calculated, every second a gamble against death and destruction. Fujimoto follows his lead, hands trembling as he adjusts oxygen and throttle, every nerve taut with anticipation. The engagement ignites instantly. Tracer fire slices through the thin clouds, streaking past cockpits, searing metal edges, forcing tight dives and sharp climbs. Lieutenant Sato dives to flank a bomber, only to be met by a hail of bullets from overlapping turrets. Another pilot, Hayashi, narrowly avoids a direct hit that rips a chunk of his wing away, forcing him into a spiral descent. Tanaka pulls his Zero into a loop, sweat and fear mingling, feeling the Zero's frame vibrate under near misses. The B-29s, massive and slow-looking from below, prove terrifyingly resilient and coordinated. Below, Tokyo burns anew. Factories, neighborhoods, and bridges vanish under precision incendiary attacks. Smoke rises in thick columns, mixing with morning mist, obscuring streets and alleys. Civilians flee wherever possible, some clutching children, others stumbling blindly through burning streets, their screams carried up by hot winds from the fires below. The roar of engines and the crack of anti-aircraft fire create a symphony of chaos that reaches the ears of every pilot above. Tanaka's stomach knots at the scale of devastation, the helplessness of defenders, and the terrifying precision of the B-29's raids. The squadron experiments with new tactics. Tanaka leads a daring dive along the bomber formation's left flank, attempting to disrupt their spacing, forcing evasive maneuvers. Fujimoto follows closely, fingers numb, wings trembling, lungs straining against the thin air. The B-29 gunners anticipate every action, overlapping fire zones making each maneuver perilous. Yet the Zero's agility allows brief glimpses of potential weakness, fleeting opportunities to strike, but none last long enough to make a significant impact. Hours stretch as the sky becomes a deadly chessboard. Tanaka's muscles ache, mind racing, adrenaline surging with every evasive move. Below, Tokyo continues to crumble under incendiaries. Streets, markets, homes, everything familiar is reduced to ash and smoke. Every sortie adds to the tally of destruction, yet the pilots press on, understanding that even small delays in the bomber's path could save lives on the ground. At the command center, officers review radar data and previous engagement reports. Captain Hashino paces, muttering strategies under his breath, but each suggestion faces the stark reality. The B-29s fly higher, faster, and more coordinated than anticipated. Conventional interception tactics are failing. Japan's air defense must adapt or be rendered irrelevant. Tanaka listens, internalizing every word, knowing tomorrow will bring another raid, another test of endurance and courage. By nightfall, the squadron lands, Zeros battered but still intact. Pilots stagger from cockpits, soot streaking faces, exhaustion pressing down like a physical weight. Tanaka walks among them, cataloging damage, injuries, morale. "We adapt, we learn, we survive," he mutters, more to himself than anyone else. The city glows faintly through lingering smoke, skeletal outlines of neighborhoods illuminated by sporadic fire. Somewhere above, B-29s patrol silently, their engines a reminder that the war has irrevocably shifted. Tanaka sits alone at the edge of the runway, listening to the wind whisper through shattered hangars. He feels the weight of loss, responsibility, and the relentless pressure of history pressing upon every living soul below. Every engine roar above, every flash of silver fuselage is a reminder. Mockery is gone, disbelief replaced with grim understanding. The skis are no longer theirs alone, and survival depends on adaptation, ingenuity, and endurance. The pilots prepare for the next sortie, discussing tactics, potential weak points, and defensive maneuvers. Every word carries the gravity of reality. Every decision could mean life or death. The B-29's presence is a constant, relentless pressure, shaping every thought, action, and plan. Tokyo's residents below remain unaware of the precise danger above, their lives hanging by threads determined by the aerial ballet of pilots and machines at impossible altitudes. As midnight approaches, Tanaka reviews the damage reports, noting the destruction in each district. Fires still rage in some sectors, smoke twisting into dark plumes visible for miles. Pilots share whispered fears and strategies, forming a fragile network of resistance against an unstoppable airborne force. Tanaka leans back against the Zero, eyes on the horizon where distant clouds suggest the B-29's next approach. He inhales the cold air, the weight of responsibility pressing down, knowing tomorrow will demand the same courage, endurance, and unyielding determination.